Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios for today's Sports Source. We appreciate you being here. We have a packed show. So many schools jumping conferences these days. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about fall camp, which is about to start for Tennessee. What's the top priority for the Vols? We'll talk about the big money that the UT Athletic Director department is raking in right now. We'll talk basketball, who's the most important man to that team as they begin a trip to Italy, on and on and on. And we'll also get your take. We're going to break down Tennessee's non-conference scheduling compared to the rest of the SEC, and we'll show you just how many home games you're going to get compared to what SEC fans are going to get around the league with Power 5 opponents. It's not great, but you can tell us in our poll today whether or not you think the scheduling is A-OK or needs work. Let's get into the show. First segment brought to you by our friends at the Garza Law Firm. As I mentioned, a lot of schools are jumping from conference to conference right now. They're having to examine their contracts and legalese. They need good attorneys. When it comes to good attorneys in East Tennessee, Garza Law Firm, that's where you turn. If you need a defense attorney, you will find no one better than the Garza Law Firm. Visit them online, garzalaw.com, to learn more about them. Years and years and years of experience right here in East Tennessee. This isn't a group that just runs ads in East Tennessee and they're based in Birmingham or Atlanta. There are a lot of those groups out there. Garza Law Firm right here, big part of this community, have been for years and years. Garza Law Firm. All right, let's welcome in today's panel. And once these guys get to talking, you'll see the little graphics underneath them. We'll tell you where they work. We're going to get fast. I'm not going to do all the song and dance, although it'd be pretty easy today since three of you in the same place. Josh Ward is right there. Vince Ferrara right here. Ryan Callahan right there. Will West down there. Appreciate all you guys for coming in today.
Thanks, sir.
All right, and I mentioned this a second ago. Plenty of football on deck today. But since we now have a polling option, I wanted to give you an opportunity to take part in something that we tackled kind of in depth last summer, a little deeper this summer. UT's non-conference scheduling. We're going to show you how Tennessee compares to all the other teams in the SEC, and you can vote in the poll. Let's go ahead and put it up here. You can either go to sportsource.tv/polls and vote right there, or you can use the QR code on the screen right there. We've already had several people vote because we put this online yesterday. It was on Twitter. Right now, you can go from embarrassing, turn the little dial to the far left, or you can go all the way to the right and say the scheduling's exciting. Or if you're like, it's kind of mediocre or whatever, set it up appropriately, and it will be reacted to right there on the screen. Right now, the average vote is below par, is what you guys say for Tennessee scheduling. But go ahead and take part today. I appreciate that. Matter of fact, I saw this in another market and brought it in, and we have had more success than the major market with this than they had. I mean, that's really surprised me that we've only been doing this a couple of weeks and we're getting more clicks than they do. But the problem with the most clicks is it takes more people to make that meter move. You know, if there's only 5 or 6 people doing it, it's jumping all over the place and it's fun to watch. But anyway, go ahead and vote and take part with us. All right, let's just get into this thing. Let's start the comparisons by showing you what Tennessee's coming up with over the next 8 years. All right, now, you will see there, if you got a little half white circle, that's a neutral site game, as you can read. If you got a full white circle, that's a home game. And if it's just the logo by itself, that's a road game. So Tennessee, 4 neutral site games. Virginia, NC State, Syracuse, West Virginia again in 2028. You've only got 2 home games in the next 8 years. Power 5 teams coming in here, Nebraska and Washington. You've also got Nebraska and Washington on the road, but 4 neutral site games. So 2 home games for the Tennessee fans with big-name opponents. Nebraska is not exactly top of the heap right now, just breaking in a new coach, but Nebraska and Washington, good names. Let's compare this just to the SEC West. I want you guys to jump in with these. What's a better schedule for the home fans? All right, let's go from Tennessee to Alabama. Okay. Now, clearly, they've got a few more on there. You've got Texas this year, still not in the conference. That's a non-conference game against the Power 5. They're at Wisconsin next year. Then they got Florida State and Wisconsin. You start to see teams that are doubling up now with 2 Power 5s. Some of them are going to have 3. Florida State on the road, Wisconsin at home. The next year, West Virginia on the road, Florida State at home. The next year, West Virginia and Ohio State. Then Ohio State, Oklahoma State. Notre Dame, Oklahoma State. Georgia Tech, Notre Dame. So home games, Texas, Wisconsin, Florida State, West Virginia, Ohio State, Oklahoma State, Notre Dame. Do we even need to collect a vote here?
No, I think you know the answer.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. Arkansas, they got 8 games, just like Tennessee, but they got 4 at home, 4 on the road. They're not doing the neutral site game at home. They've got BYU, Notre Dame, Utah, and Oklahoma State. And then they're on the road at Notre Dame, Texas Tech, Utah, Oklahoma State. Again, compare that to Tennessee. I would rather see 4 big-name schools than 2, if it's me. But you guys, your thoughts on the schedule?
That's not as good as Alabama, but I'm more intrigued by that than what Tennessee's slate is.
All right, let's take a look at Auburn, see what you guys think. Vince, give me a thought here. Their schools aren't as big, but they're still, well, it's not as sexy, but it's still Power 5 teams. I mean, you got a home game, home and a road with California, home and away with Baylor, home and away with UCLA, home and away with Miami. I mean, UCLA is not exactly high right now. Cal's down at the moment, but still, Cal, UCLA, Miami, Baylor, compared to just Nebraska and Washington.
Yeah, it's the fans getting an opportunity to see a different opponent, and one that at times those opponents have peaked. Who knows what Miami is going to be at that point, or UCLA. It is still more appealing than Tennessee's in number and I think just overall some of the brands.
Brand names. All right, let's start speeding through this a little bit. LSU, you see, they've still got an opening there in 2028, so my guess is they will put another home game in there. But they've got a neutral site game against Florida State. That neutral site game against Houston down there in 2027, that's going to be played at the Texans Stadium. Mm-hmm. So it's in Houston, but I called it neutral site. They also have a neutral site with USC. They got USC and UCLA next year. But their home games, UCLA, Clemson, Arizona State. And again, I would suspect they'll put another one in there in 2028. Let's roll ahead. Here's what Mississippi State's doing. Not the biggest brands, but again, they're not afraid to go play somewhere else, and they're bringing different people into Starkville. Arizona, Arizona State, Minnesota, and Washington State coming into Starkville. They'll be on the road to Arizona State, Texas Tech, Minnesota. They've got 5 home games to only 3 road games in that 8-game stretch. So those brands, you don't have Nebraska or Washington, but you got 5 of those. Which is better, Tennessee or this?
I would take Mississippi State right now. I would.
If we're just talking home games, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 5-2, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even close.
For your consumer, for the fan.
If you're buying tickets.
Yeah, this is especially with what people charge for season tickets now in the donation. Absolutely, you'd rather have this than neutral site games against the 50th best team in the nation right now.
Yep. All right, let's take a look at the next one. I think this is the last one. No, we got Ole Miss. All right, they've got Georgia Tech at home. They've got Wake Forest at home. They've got Oregon State at home. They've got BYU at home. They've also got Southern Cal at home. Well, that's, I would love to see Tennessee with Southern Cal at home.
Lane against USC, by the way, assuming he's still there?
Should be, if he's still there, should be entertaining. All right, and then the last one, Texas A&M. And they've got a hole at the end of theirs, too, which you suspect they'll fill probably with a home game. But Notre Dame, Arizona State, Louisville, all going to Texas A&M. But just look at the brands. Miami, Notre Dame twice, Arizona State twice, Louisville twice. Let's come on back to us here. All right, that's just the West. We're going to show you the East. If you're sitting there scheduling, well, of course Tennessee's not going to schedule like Alabama. Yeah, they're not, but you're going to see plenty of teams in the East who are right there with Tennessee who are scheduling above them. Is that good enough? 2 Power 5s at home. Is that good enough in an 8-year stretch if you're a Tennessee fan buying tickets?
I don't think so. I don't think it is at all. And I do think that you're digging a little bit out of a hole that was created during the Dave Hart, Butch Jones years where Butch wanted to schedule down and Dave Hart kind of had the antiquated thought process of we need to go to neutral site games as opposed to having these home and homes to maximize revenue. I don't think that's still true anymore. I think in the future you're going to want as many home games as you can get, especially if you had a 9th non-conference game, because that's where your money's going to come from, not because you played in Charlotte, Atlanta, Nashville. But I think it goes back a little bit to, I think Dave Hart, Butch Jones, I think even Philip Fulmer at times, didn't value the Tennessee brand as well as maybe even Danny White and Josh Heupel, who aren't from here, do. And I think they thought, I need to get into this place to be able to recruit, so let's play this game in Charlotte to be able to get players from that area. I need to be in Nashville so we can recruit, as opposed to if you're good and putting people in the NFL, you're going to be able to recruit.
Right. Well, I mean, the only argument would be Danny White cancel the road game to BYU, which I think would have been a cool trip. And, I'm just not big on canceling road trips. If you have somebody come here, and you've got it on the docket to go play, don't chicken out. And that's what that is, that's chickening out. Then you schedule Virginia in Nashville and pitch it as, well, our fans would rather go here than go to Utah. Some of them would, absolutely, but you also get a chance to go to Vanderbilt every year, basically. I mean, you're playing there in a bowl game, you're playing there in a neutral site, or you got Vandy every other year. So to me, he likes some of the neutral sites as well. He's also the one that put the next West Virginia thing in there in 2028. Ryan, your thoughts? Is too good enough? Am I making too big of a deal of this?
I don't think it's good enough. And like you said, I think fans enjoy these different road trips to other places too. So for me, it's not just the home games. But yeah, if you're looking at it from a home game perspective, 2 in 8 years, definitely not good enough. And Tennessee fans, they want better home games. They're tired of seeing these non-Power 5 schools, these FCS schools roll through every year. The schedule looks flat some years when you don't have Florida and Alabama on the home schedule. It looks kind of flat because you don't have that Power 5 opponent to prop it up a little bit.
I spoke with someone who used to work at UT a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about scheduling, and he was kind of bothered by the fact that, his take was Tennessee and Alabama used to lead this league. We were the two that went out and played nationally. We were the two that weren't scared to schedule anybody. We opened the door. Everybody else just stayed in the South. Now Tennessee's kind of coming back into, well, we play in this little circle, and that's the only place we go, and we don't get any of the big names in here. Is it fair to be disappointed in that? Do you look at Tennessee's brand and say it's a bigger brand than it's being treated? Or no? Is that me putting words in your mouth?
Well, I'm not a big neutral site guy, unless you're playing a massive opponent where it's a huge buildup.
USC and LSU are playing in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
That is a neutral site. That I'd be applauding.
Yeah,
going to
or
Nashville and play
Dallas or
Virginia.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, the LSU Florida State openers back-to-back years on neutral sites I think are very exciting. But West Virginia, Syracuse, Virginia this year as
NC
opponents,
State,
not really doing it for me. I'll cut them a little bit of a break on the NC State because you had the Oklahoma cancellation 2020-24. So replacing with NC State's pretty good, but it's also not going to measure up to some of the other games you laid out there. So I want to see more home and home. I've been a strong proponent in an expanded playoff about home field because one of the great things about college football is the campus environment, the home stadium environment. That applies to non-conference, the Norman-Knoxville trips that fans made in the mid-2010s. Fans love both sides of it. I want to see more of that.
It's not good enough for the fans. So that's kind of the way we're viewing it here. I do think that there are some people that would rather win games than have a fancy schedule that they can brag about them being there. Because when we're doing the 2024 discussion of what the schedule should look like, things like that, and I'd throw out some difficult schedules of who they get matched up with, people are like, no, you kidding me? That's the toughest schedule in the history of college football. So some people want those wins more so than the good games. But, and I don't give them a pass for coming out of Dave Hart because Philip Fulmer was talking about, hey, I think the on-campus should be something
he didn't
new.
like the neutral side.
Right. Yeah. They didn't do a ton in terms of scheduling that, but Danny White can change it and go in a different direction. I do think I give him a little bit of a wait and see because of the changing landscape of college football and the playoff expanding a little bit too. So
I want to see with the SEC changing its schedule, whatever it winds up with, how many of those games from other conferences, other teams in the conference get canceled. That said, they're on the books. You didn't even have them on the books. So even if they canceled them at one point or not, they were daring to put those teams out there. My fear is we got to catch a break, but we'll come back and get you in here. My problem with this is when you look at the University of Tennessee schedule through history, there are not many years where the best team on your schedule, non-conference, is Virginia or Syracuse. They got lucky with Pitt. They scheduled Pitt when Pitt was down. BYU wouldn't have been your toughest game years ago. So I think that's a little disappointing. I'll shoo this fly or bug or whatever this is off the set. Let's go ahead and tell you what's coming up today on the show the rest of the way. We've got a deep dive on SEC schedules, a little more of that. Plenty of you are voting. We appreciate that. UT making huge money. We'll detail that. Vols open fall camp at football. What's their top priority? Hoops teams, what's their number one priority? Who's their number one guy? Conference realignment, back in the news, of course, and much, much more. When we come back, is it just smart business to buy your way to 6 wins, to go the Kentucky route? That's what it looks like Tennessee's going to do. We'll discuss that next, and we'll show you how Tennessee compares against Georgia, Florida, South Carolina. South Carolina out-scheduling you by a country mile, a low country mile, if you will. Come on back on the Sports Source.